Anthony Handy, hope you had a good weekend, sir. Hope everyone out there listening did as well. Jalen Hurts, I'm guessing he had a pretty good weekend. That's where we start the show today. Hurts, of course, the Eagles quarterback, now going to be that for a long, long time, and it's his call on when that changes to an extent. Hurts agreeing to a 5-year, $255 million deal with the Eagles. $179 million in guarantees. It has a no trade clause as well. Hurts now the highest paid player in NFL history if you go by total contract value at that $255 million. He's also the highest in terms of APY, average per year. He is getting $51 million if you go kind of the total value. He does get quote unquote only the $179 million in guarantees. But obviously a massive, massive number. A lot of that is very early in the contract. And I would say it's a great day to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, which also means if you're a Washington Commanders fan, today's a day that might sting a little bit. They've got the thing that the Commanders have been searching for the better part of 25 years. They've got a franchise quarterback and one that looks happy and in place. And by the way, somehow most of this cap, or in terms of the cash up front because of a huge signing bonus, and there's a lot of guaranteed money early on, but the way it works in terms of the cap, Eagles are fine for a couple years. A lot of this cap is pushed back into 2026 and 7 and 8. And that's going to allow them to continue to do the things that they've done. I truly don't know if there's a team close to what the Eagles have done in team building. The Chiefs obviously have built their team very, very well. They have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones. That's a pretty good job. They figured out how to get that, but obviously Tyreek Hill they trade away. They get some stuff back in that deal, and we'll see how good those picks are ultimately over the next couple of years. But the Eagles, what they've done, it's unmatched. And I remember last year hosting the draft show and the trade they make for A.J. Brown on draft night. You're just like, how in the world? And then somehow they've still got 2 first-round picks this year. They're picking before the Commanders in this draft. It's crazy. It's incredible what Howie Roseman has done. And I don't mean to come on and just compliment the Eagles a bunch and get everyone's week off to a terrible start because, look, who knows? Hurts, he's very, very good. Can't do it by himself. Who knows how their roster will look in a couple of years when their O-line, for instance, ages out a little bit, when Jason Kelce ultimately decides to retire, when Lane Johnson decides to retire, or they have a couple of injuries up front. Do they turn into a pretty pedestrian team quickly? I don't know. Their defense is still pretty good. I like their skill players. Obviously, Hurts is now being paid a lot of money, and he's going to have to elevate a mediocre line if that were to happen. But they've also got these first-round picks to insulate there, where they can take, if they want to at 10, take Peter Skoronski, start him at right guard, and then he's takes Lane Johnson's place in a couple years at right tackle and is there for the next decade. They have the ability to do that. So football and the nature of pro football in the NFL is that you can never be fully insulated against everything. You always are going to have potential holes because it's a violent sport and injuries happen. And not just the violence, but it's a game with a lot of quick cutting movements. It's a game where guys are diving at each other's legs. There's a lot of ways. If I were to pick a bunch of ways to get hurt and combine them into a sport, it'd be NFL football. Guys pushing their bodies to the absolute limits of human strength and speed capacities. It's not normal for guys who are 225 pounds to run and cut at the speeds NFL athletes do. We are pushing the levels every single day of human performance. But if that is the worst thing that's going for a team, is that they're subject to the same market and earth forces as everybody else, that's a pretty damn well put together football team. And that unfortunately, if you're a Commanders fan or you're one of the many Cowboys fans living in D.C. or a Giants fan or a fan of anybody else who wants to win the NFC, that stinks. That stinks. And all you can do is tip your hat from my analyst chair, tip your hat to Howie Roseman and go, good job, man. Good job. Also, shout out Nicole Lynn, his agent, whose rise in the sport has been remarkable. Basically the first black woman to cross every single threshold that a woman could cross in this sport, definitely a black woman crossing in this sport. She's done an incredible job building an empire over at Clutch Sports and getting this contract done in a way that really works for everybody. And that's the other thing. And I'll give the Commanders credit here for like Daron Payne, right? The Giants are going to have multiple guys, including Dexter Lawrence, not showing up to their OTAs today. You're going to see other players around the league not show up because their contracts aren't done. And while I don't know how much you can really prescribe a gain of a win, a gain of a loss to missing an OTA session in April, I'd rather have my guys there and happy. And especially I'd rather have my franchise quarterback there and happy. And for Nicole and Howie Roseman and Jalen to get this done on this timeline and be willing to do it before Herbert, before Burrow, before some of the other deals, obviously Lamar floating out there, before some of these other deals, and just say, hey, this is the market as it stands. We know it's going to change with a second Burrow signs. He's probably going to be the highest paid quarterback in the league. And based off the combination of timeline, Mahomes taking the contract that he did, and skill, like, honestly, he deserves to be. He's probably the best guy not named Mahomes. Although, as we'll get to in a moment, I'll hear arguments for some other guys. We are going to prioritize getting this done because the Eagles are already fighting the Super Bowl loser type of thing that happens. Typically, the team that loses the Super Bowl has a pretty down year the next year. It doesn't really make a lot of sense logistically because obviously they're very good, but that's just the way it's been in NFL history. So for the Eagles to get this done and start OTAs on the right foot, get everybody back in the building, get some of their new acquisitions up to speed with Jalen. You know, obviously they've got a new OC, new defensive coordinator, a lot of new stuff going on in Philly. Like, this is a huge win for everybody involved in the process. And, you know, as I said, I give the Commanders credit too for doing the same thing with Daron Payne. Like, getting that deal done means you don't have the distractions that other teams have where guys aren't showing up. Speaking of the Commanders and their OTAs and attendance, Chase Young in attendance today. We'll get more on that and the significance of it from Sam Fortier when he joins us for Not My Beat coming up at 5 o'clock. We also got Ian Eagle on the show today. NBA on TNT, also, of course, the NFL on CBS. We'll ask Ian his thoughts on the Commanders' ownership sale and get his thoughts on the game that he's calling tonight, Game 2 of Kings and Warriors, 10 o'clock tonight on TNT. But next, who are the top 5 quarterbacks currently in the NFL as the contract numbers continue to shift? Who are the top 5? Anthony and I will give you our lists. Next is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, time to get some rankings. Anthony Haney, you're in on this, so hope you got your top 5 quarterbacks ready, bro.
What if I don't? I'm joking, I do.
Okay. I feel like it's a list. If you work in sports radio, I feel like you got to keep the top 5 quarterbacks list available for kind of an anytime, anywhere. Hey, are you ready to go? Oh, we're just walking down the street on a Wednesday.
Yep.
It's 11 a.m. Hey, are you Anthony Haney from the Hoffman Show? Who are your top 5 NFL quarterbacks? You just got to be able to be like, well, I got it right here. Open up your sheet of paper and get gone.
Yep. Hey, and that's me right now.
All right, so Jalen Hurts now's got the most money. But where does he fall on the list? You want to go 1 to 5, 5 to 1?
Ooh. I mean, I think we know who 1 is. So I think we should go 5 to 1.
See, I was going to say the opposite. I think because we know who 1 is, we start there because it actually gets more. I think 5's the hardest one.
Okay.
So let's go 1 through 5.
Yes, sir.
All right. 1, 2, 3, Mahomes. Okay, that was easy. He's definitely the best. I mean, his resume, the only one that can compete with it in terms of like first 5 years in the league in terms of success is Brady. There's no one really that can compete with it. Statistically, he's done it with obviously tremendous weapons and a great coach. Hopefully that the offensive coordinator that he was with had something to do with it, and he can bring some of that magic here. But he does stuff no one else does. He makes these incredible off-platform throws. He's arguably the best quarterback in the league on schedule. He's definitely the best quarterback in the league off schedule. He's also a very, very effective runner. Like, there are no holes in Patrick Mahomes' game. The only thing that happens is sometimes he gets bored and tries stuff, and he doesn't really do that as much in the playoffs. But sometimes he still does and gets away with it. So, Mahomes, number 1, easy. Anything you want to add?
Nah, he's a magician. Like, he checks every box. And, actually, I'll wait for this point. I'll wait till we get to the end for this point of Mahomes.
Okay. All right. I'm now curious what it is that just has to wait till the end to get.
I mean, I can say it now. It's just more so we've seen Mahomes at his peak when he's had, a lot of talent around him. And a lot of talent is very subjective because I'm only talking about 2 people when he had Tyreek Hill, when he had Travis Kelce. I think
right.
You look at all the other QBs, they have 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 different guys that they can lean on, and he's consistently done more with less.
No, that's a good point. Levels of less, because I do think he's had some good players. And the other thing is I think they, as a coaching staff, he's arguably had more coaching help than anybody else. I mean, he's got Reed, and Bieniemy's incredibly smart and such a good technical coach and such a good accountability coach. So he's gotten the most out of some of these other guys that have great traits but may not be as effective other places. So, it's a combination of it all, but your point's well taken compared to some of the other guys we're about to talk about. All right, I've got Burrow at 2, and I actually, I don't want to say it's not close because these other guys are incredible. I just think when you get the combination of accuracy, decision-making, ability, the right amount of risk-taking, he's mobile enough that he can run a little bit, and he can certainly convert for you on 3rd down. If you play cover 0 and come after him with the blitz, he can slip out and hurt you. I think he's the best combination of all of those things that you'd want in a quarterback. He also can make throws off platform. He can do some of the other stuff, but obviously Mahomes is an alien when it comes to that kind of stuff. I've got Burrow at 2.
I have Burrow at 2, and much for the same reason as yours. I feel as though Joe is he's a winner at the end of the day. You need him to go out there and show up for a big game. That's what he's going to do. I don't think he's had really any big games where he hasn't, where he's come up short necessarily. As far as decision making, being decisive, being able to read and analyze a defense, I think he's perfect when it comes to knowing where the ball has to go. And that's why I got him right behind Mahomes. I think if he's to go out there and get a Super Bowl, hey, he's up there with Mahomes. I still don't think he's Mahomes, but, he's 1A, 1B type of thing if he was to get a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he's definitely not Mahomes.
Yeah.
And even if he gets a Super Bowl, like, sure, he can close the gap, but I mean, it's team sport at the end of the day. And like you said, like, he's got Jamar Chase. And part of that, though, is like, is it possible to get more out of Jamar Chase? No. Like, Joe Burrow's so freaking good, he gets the most out of Jamar Chase. If you were to trade Kirk Cousins for Joe Burrow, like, Justin Jefferson would reach even another level. Like, that's how good Joe Burrow is, considering what Justin Jefferson did last year. Like, if there's more to unlock, Joe Burrow will find it. That's what makes that guy special. He will get the most out of everybody, as opposed to, but not necessarily create more than is even there, like Mahomes might. Where, like, you just get extra yards from Mahomes for your receivers because he extends plays and does crazy stuff, and all of a sudden there's an extra 30-yard gain to be had. Burrow's not necessarily going to do that, but he will put a ball in a window that only he sees, that's only where the receiver can get it on a play where he looks 100% covered. And that's a really, really special skill. Like, that's super high-level quarterbacking, and I think Burrow does that as well as anybody. So Burrow, to me, is 2.
Yep.
All right. Who's your third? Because this is where it gets fun.
I have Lamar.
Wow.
I have Lamar at 3. And part of the reason is because I don't think Lamar gets the respect that he's due, to be honest.
I agree with you, but that's why I have him where I have him, and it's not at 3.
Granted, he has been injured the last 2 seasons, but prior to those injuries, the Ravens were at the top of the AFC both of those seasons. And I know availability is the best ability. But when he's on the field, when he's clicking, when he's on, we know what he can do. And people love to talk about the fact that he's not the most accurate guy. Oh, he's only a runner. He's pretty accurate from the pocket. Just look at the numbers. He's pretty accurate from the pocket. And I think people need to put a little bit more respect on that. He is more dynamic from, being able to run and use his legs. But you got to take something away. And if you want to take away his legs, all right, force him to beat you down the field. He also doesn't have as much help as, some of these other quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, he has 2 wide receiver 1s and a wide receiver 2. Lamar Jackson has never had that. Never. So I think being able to get him some help, being able to, like, just look at him as a QB who's capable of delivering from the pocket and also hurting you on the ground, I think that's why I have him at 3.
So what Lamar has had is one of the best running games in the sport, and that comes with a very good O-line, and that is certainly helpful. But, like, again, Lamar wasn't very good last year, right, in quotation marks. He was still 17-7, like 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. That's before you get to any contributions he made as a runner. Mm-hmm. So, like, Washington quarterbacks, last time a dude threw for 17 touchdowns in a season. It feels like it's been forever. And, like, that's kind of the thing is he's way better from the pocket than people realize. Part of that is because teams are scared to death of his legs, but, like, okay, that's a feature, not a bug. He is, like, the stuff that he misses as a passer is more of like, okay, does he see the read? Not when he decides to make a throw, is it accurate? That kind of stuff. And, that involves like a higher level of tape breakdown. And I'm not going to pretend to have watched every game, but there's certainly evaluators that look at it and be like, well, he misses stuff that way. He misses potential yardage through the air. Okay, fine. He's still awesome. He's still so good. And the run, again, I count the running as a feature, not a bug. Can he sustain it over time? Sure, TBD. He's been hurt the last couple of years. People that say it has nothing to do with his playing style as a defense, I don't really understand. He's still been hurt the last couple of years. And like you said, availability is the number one ability. But I would still take 2 more guys ahead of him. To me, this is super close, though. Like, Mahomes Burrow's pretty easy for me, 1-2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Hurts here.
Okay.
I think Jalen, his accuracy, his decision-making, his leadership, and his clutch ability is top-notch. When I say clutch ability, it is like the 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 QB sneaks. He's so reliable in a situation that comes up frequently in games, like multiple times per week. That is a monster situation. And like when you don't even know what your 3rd and 1 play call is going to be because do we run it? Do we go play action? Do we throw it? Do we boot? If we sneak, are we just going to get stuffed? Eagles never have to worry about that. Sirianni's like, hey, get a big guy behind Jalen, start pushing, automatic first down. Like, that is so valuable. And that's just, again, one feature of a very well-rounded quarterback who has always been incredibly accurate and whose, field vision has opened up over the last couple of years. They've done a great job of bringing him along. They still have a great O-line. So part of this is obviously the situation around them. I would take Hurts. And then right behind him, I still think last year until he hurt his elbow. And then things were not quite the same. They obviously lose in the playoffs to a very, very good football team. I'm not going to hold that against him. I still think Josh Allen is the guy who we saw for the first, whatever it was, weeks last year before the elbow got hurt. That was awesome. He's way more accurate than we all thought he would ever be. His running ability is top-notch. He can throw from every arm angle. He makes throws no one else in the league can. He's incredible. And he's been outside of this elbow thing where he still played decently well, although not magnificently. He's been pretty durable. So I would go for my top 5, Anthony: Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts, Allen, Jackson. I would put Lamar as 5. What you got?
So I got Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar. I have Hurts 4th, and then Josh Allen 5th. I think Hurts' leadership definitely does separate him from a lot of other quarterbacks. Being able to just, go with the game plan. The team wants to, run the ball, ground and pound, and then dink and dump, and being able to, set up for the big shot. I think he does a great job at just carrying out the game plan. And then also just being able to be I lost my train of thought. Anyway, going on to number 5, I really just lost it. And then going on to Josh Allen, I have him 5th. Just because I want to see my man win some big games. I feel like too many times he's come up short, and I think that's the next hurdle for him, or obstacle that he needs to get over in order for him to move up in my QB power rankings.
He's played well in some, but eventually you got to win him, and that's kind of where Allen is in his career. All right, that's our top 5. The question we have for you on the phones is this for the next segment: 301-230-0980. is the number to call to answer. Which of those guys or someone else you want to throw a Justin Herbert? Is there a Sam Howell, super fan out there that wants to throw Sam Howell?
Sam Howell, super fan. Talk to me, please.
I'm just saying. 301-230-0980. For the next 5 years, which is the length of Jalen Hurts' extension, which quarterback would you like to have in the NFL? 301-230-0980. Which quarterback do you want for the next 5 years? The Hoffman Show, taking your calls next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well. If you're on YouTube, you can chat with us as well. I'm kind of checking that as we go as well, so you can always make sure that you're locked into us there. YouTube.com/@theteam980. Oh, Essig's logged in on this computer. Essig. It's all right. I can still get to where I need to go. So take your calls. Which quarterback would you want the next 5 years? 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Anthony, if we extend this out to 5 years, do you still say Mahomes for the next 5? We both were like, yep, Mahomes is the guy.
For the next 10 years, to be honest, Mahomes.
I agree. Like, I'm sure that there is someone listening who is like, nope, it should definitely be this, that, or we'll come up with some wild card. And maybe we can say, all right, let's take Mahomes out of it because that kind of makes it more fun. Mahomes is the best in the business. He just is. He's still young. He's experienced. Again, I would contend there are no holes in Patrick Mahomes' game. But who's next? Would you take Burrow as the guy you want for the next 5 years? Do you think someone can surpass him?
I mean, as long as, he has Jamar Chase, as long as he has T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, I think it's going to be tough to, really stop that offense. I mean, with Joe Burrow, I just look at the help that he has. Like, I think any of the quarterbacks on our list are more than capable of, being number 2. But I think when it comes down to, like, what they have around them, what's surrounding them, and that's ultimately impacting the success of that offense, I think that's more so what I'm looking at.
So, to me, I look at also, like, what are the growth trajectories? Like, what are these guys, what makes everybody great, and how will that develop over the next 5 years? So, Lamar, I think, is probably the easiest one to pass on, considering all the chaos around him right now. He's the oldest. He is the most reliant on his mobility to be great. Again, he's still very good from the pocket, but if you had to pick one to play from the pocket of these 5, he'd probably be last on the list. Now, the other 4 might be 4 of the 6 best in the entire league from the pocket, so, like, again, no shame there. But Lamar, to me, like, with the injury stuff, adding up, like, what does it look like over the next 5 years? It's a pretty big question mark.
Would you say Hurts is more accurate than Lamar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do think, and I think the numbers bear that out, right? I'm not making that
no,
up.
You're not. I think he's got
difficulty
so
of throw
better.
and all that kind of stuff can come into it. But Hurts last year, I mean, look, it's 1 year of completion percentage, but Hurts last year 66.5, Lamar was 62.3. Ironically sandwiched between Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke.
That's hilarious.
He was technically tied with Wentz, 62.3%. Lamar threw a lot more passes than both of those guys.
Yeah.
And he also had 17 touchdowns and 7 picks, where Wentz had 11 and 9 and Heineke had 12 and 6. But, in the modern NFL to go 62%, it's really not that special. But like you said, like, let's also talk about who he's throwing to. Like, Wentz and Heineke went the same percentage as Lamar, throwing to Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, etc. And Lamar did it throwing to Mark Andrews and Devin Duvernay. Duvernay might be good.
Duvernay, yeah, he's solid. Bateman, I think he can be solid, but
they cap out at, like, solid to good.
Yeah.
Terry's top 7 receiver in the league. If you want to be super ungenerous,
Yep.
might be better than that. Anyway, back to the, like, projecting out thing. Like, the thing that makes Burrow so special is his processing, and that's just going to get better the more reps he gets. Like, he already sees the field so clearly, but imagine when he's got 5 years under his belt, 6 years under his belt, 7 years, and it's going to get to the point where he's like Brady and Manning were at the end of their careers, where the athleticism and lack of it didn't really matter, and Burrow's a better athlete than both those guys ever were. But they just had such an encyclopedic knowledge of every defense, a look at, and such of, like, a photographic memory of every defense that's ever been thrown at them. And not only do they know exactly what every coach in the league is trying to do, but they know the answer to it. and they can communicate well enough to be like, oh, I know this look. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. And if, at that point in his career, Joe Burrow still got Jamar Chase, he's going to be throwing Jamar Chase a whole lot of touchdowns over the next decade. I think Hurts has some of that as well. His recall is great. His control at the line of scrimmage is excellent. I do think, obviously, as he gets older, some of the big playability in the run game that separates him to that highest of tiers is going to go away. But I do think he'll be able to make up for it by becoming a 3,500, 4,000-yard passer if the Eagles want to run their offense that way. My biggest question with Hurts, honestly, is the situation around him. Like, what happens? And this, I would have the same question for basically everybody but Mahomes, which is what happens if your offensive line is not very good? And the Bengals, to an extent, have dealt Burrow this hand, and he's survived. But Hurts has lived, and this is not a shot at Jalen. Like, it's not his fault. His offensive line is great, and it's not a matter of, hey, man, you got to play behind a bad O-line to actually prove how good you are. But he's lived a blessed NFL life by quarterback standards, playing behind that O-line, which is probably the best in the business. So that would be my biggest question with Hurts moving forward. Allen, I think the question is durability, because he runs and takes a lot of hits because he's so big. Like, is there going to be a little bit of the Cam Newton effect where he eventually regresses because he's taken so many big shots and he's been used as a short yardage back? And then you got other guys that are wild card answers. Like, is Justin Herbert going to work his way up? Trevor Lawrence, obviously. I can make a case that Lawrence should have been on this list over really Allen or Lamar. I don't feel comfortable putting him over Hurts yet. But, like, Trevor Lawrence is that good already, and he's only getting better. And then I'll give you another super wild card, Anthony, a guy that you've probably seen play more than anyone around here because you're so into the high school scene. What's your file on Caleb Williams?
Oh, Caleb Williams. I'm excited to see what he does. I'm sad he has to wait another season, but he's drawing a lot of parallels to Mahomes. That's all I'm going to say. He's drawing a lot of parallels to Mahomes. He can make every throw. He's very mobile. He's good at dissecting defenses. Like, if
Logan has scouting buddies telling him that he's Michael Jordan.
He's Michael Jordan?
Like, this dude's about to be as good as we've ever seen.
He's nasty, man.
Which is always what people say a year out.
It's a little scary, though, because I want to say he is about 6 feet. Like, 6 feet isn't short in the NFL, but it's also not very tall. So that's my only concern for him. But outside of that, he's the only other QB I could really, draw parallels to Patrick Mahomes. And if you're getting those type of parallels, you got to be good.
Yeah, you got to be just excellent. So that's, to me, those are the candidates. Is there anybody else that we didn't mention that you think could crack this list in the next 5 years? Top 5 NFL quarterback at some point in the next 5 years.
No, outside of that, Herbert, that's my guy. Did have all that great of a season, but it was pretty good. They didn't get the wins that they necessarily needed, but outside of him, nah.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if Tua and the Dolphins make some noise, and a lot of people are giving Tua that kind of
Tua's a guy I thought about because some of he's top 5 in a lot of categories last year. But also that feels reliant on his situation of Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, and is he actually that good? He's real good, super accurate. And then I guess the other group of guys that we should consider are the rookies. None of the rookies from last year. I don't think Kenny Pickett's getting up there. I don't think anybody else did anything that spectacular. Bailey Zappi's not going to take Mac Jones's job and wind him up on this list. But do you think Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or one of the dudes from this year could? That would be the other people that could theoretically crack that list. And hey, if you're saying, hey, who do you want for the next 5 years, and you think Bryce Young is him, you get him on a rookie deal for the next 5 years. That's pretty cool. But I tend to think that the 7 guys we named, our agreeance on who the top 5 were, plus Trevor Lawrence, plus Justin Herbert, I think those guys are going to be the guys for a while. Kyler, but I'm actually now mad at myself for mentioning him. By the way, as I was doing some research for this, you know who finished number 8 in the NFL in QBR last year?
Jacoby.
That is correct. Washington Commanders.
Yep.
Jacoby Brissett as a Cleveland Brown. So there's that.
I hope you're not thinking about putting him on this list.
Jacoby?
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
No. No. All right. When we get back, what else happened this weekend? Plenty of news from around the entire world of sports, and we're going to extend the weekend into this morning in Boston. Get you caught up on everything before Sam Fortier joins us at 5 o'clock. First, a quick look at what's trending.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
The impetus for all of this quarterback discussion is that the Eagles have agreed to a $255 million extension with quarterback Jalen Hurts. The man who led the Eagles to the Super Bowl last year now becomes the richest player in NFL history by total contract value and average yearly salary. $255 over 5 years, has $179 in guarantees. There had been a rumor that Nick Caserio, been reports that Nick Caserio, the Houston Texans GM, was going to leave after the draft and return to the Patriots. Caserio shot that down today. Other than that, NBA playoffs tonight. The Bucks, they don't play tonight, but they did get good news today. The MRI on Giannis Antetokounmpo's back is clean. They are optimistic about his status moving forward against the Miami Heat, who will be without Tyler Hero for the rest of the series with some broken bones in that hand and wrist. That is what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We will have Sam Fortier at the top of the hour. OTAs open today. Not anything on the field. It's the classroom sessions, but there was some very specific wording in one of Sam's tweets that caught my eye today. I think he knows something. Plus, what does it mean that Chase Young is there? What does it mean that Montez Sweat was in and out, / what were the details on Sweat being in and out? His colleague Nikki Javala reported that it was not contract related. So what was going on with Montez? We'll get all the latest from Sam Fortier, Washington Post, Commanders beat reporter, in less than 10 minutes here on the Hoffman Show. So we on Mondays try to get you caught up on everything else that happened this weekend. Anthony, did you watch any of the Boston Marathon this morning?
This morning?
Yes.
No.
That's when it happened, this morning.
No.
That was a weird way you answered that. It was like, hey, if you had asked to watch the Boston Marathon on Saturday, it was like you would have said yes, but that didn't happen on Saturday. It happened this morning.
Yeah, I was expecting for you to mention, Saturday or Sunday or Friday evening, and you led with this morning. And I'm like, whoa, this morning? Nah, I did not know.
Yeah, I'm counting that as an extension of the weekend. For an afternoon show, Monday mornings are pretty chill.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I sat on the couch and I watched the Boston Marathon this morning. It was the Boston Marathon is an incredible event. Some of your eyes are glazing over, and I apologize. Again, Sam Fortier will join us with football talk in 9 minutes. But if you're a runner, if you're an athlete of any kind, like the idea of running 26 miles is just insane. Like it's so impossibly long. Like if you've ever run a half marathon, imagine doing it twice, right? That is the nature of it. And you get into the elite levels, and I'll break down some of the splits in a second of how fast. But Boston in particular is incredibly grueling because it starts kind of downhill, which sounds easy, but just puts a lot into your quads, like the front of your legs, your thighs are just burning. And then you get like 20 mile or 18-ish miles in, and there's this series of hills. They call them Heartbreak Hill. And you're uphill, and you've already run 18 miles, and you just got to eat it. And the speed at which these men and women do it is just remarkable. Now, Eliud Kipchoge, the best marathoner in the history of the world, made his Boston Marathon debut this morning, and it did not go particularly well for him. He finished 6th. It's only the 3rd marathon he's ever lost in his career. He's now won 15 of 18. Last one he lost was 2018. It was kind of rainy this morning in Boston. Last one he lost also was rainy, 2018 in London. And Evans Chebet is the guy who won it, 2nd straight year winning it. And I don't have the numbers on the exact time that Chebet did it in. But, Anthony, just to give people an idea and to give you an idea of how fast it is to run at the pace these athletes run. For Eliud Kipchoge's world record marathon pace, 2 hours, 1 minute, 9 seconds. You ever run a lap around a track, 400 meters?
Yep.
Well, how fast do you run it?
I haven't run in a while, but maybe a 50, 54, 53.
Oh, so you're burning. You can really run. Okay, that's like really, really fast. But a 69 is still like, you're still moving.
They're running 69 seconds.
105 straight 69-second 400s.
That's insane.
His world record marathon pace was a 4:37 mile.
69 seconds
What's
is
the fast,
crazy.
I don't know that I could. I think if my life depended on it and someone was chasing me with a deadly weapon, I could run a 69-second 400. And the second I crossed the finish line, my hamstring would explode.
So that means they were running a mile in
4:37.
4:37. Yeah, my fastest mile is 5:31.
Yeah. So
That's
imagine
crazy.
A minute faster than you ran your fastest mile ever. And most people are being like, damn, Anthony can run right now. I never touched 5:31.
No.
I think my fastest ever is like 6:30. And that's moving. So 4:37, and then you got to do it again 25 more times. Through hills, through whatever undulation, through not just on a track running around. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. On the women's On the women's side, incredible as well. About 2:20 finish. I can't remember the exact time. But Helen Obiri is the winner. It's her second ever marathon. Second ever marathon. And she won the Boston Marathon. She's a champion in some shorter distances, 10K, etc. And the best part is she signed up like 2 weeks ago. The elite field had someone drop out. She decided, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Second ever marathon. She wins it. Her daughter and her husband waiting for her at the finish line. Her daughter was super cute. Awesome. Congratulations. Also, congratulations to American Emma Bates, who came in 5th. Thus, she qualifies for the Paris Olympics without having to go through the Olympic trials process. Other news, we always hit some soccer in this segment. What else happened this weekend? Real quick, and then we'll break and get to Sam. The Spirit won this weekend. Washington Spirit win 2-1. Banger of a goal from Trinity Rodman. Also want to mention it, the Spirit, real quick. A little bit of a shameless plug here, but it's for a good cause. So my wife works with an organization called Set the Expectation, which helps fight sexual and domestic violence. It is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And Andy Sullivan from the Spirit and James Smith-Williams from the Commanders are champions of that organization. We are going to the game to watch Andy with James this weekend, and you can come with us and hang out and sit in club seats and watch a soccer game with James Smith-Williams from the Commanders, which seems pretty cool. All you got to do is donate to Set the Expectation by entering the raffle. To do that, Solid Core, the DC Fitness Boutique, is also involved in this. So you're going to text Solid Core to 44321. Again, that's Solid Core to 44321. You make a $50 donation. You're entered into a raffle to win club seats to hang out with James Smith-Williams at a soccer game this weekend. So that's pretty cool. And also, on the news front, completely unrelated to that, other than it's NWSL, one of the biggest stars in the sport, finally has a team. Julie Ertz, who returned to the field after injury and then pregnancy, is back on the field with the U.S. Women's National Team last week. She signed with Angel City, the team in L.A., so that is huge news, and now she's going to play and see if she can make the Olympic team or the World Cup team this summer. So that is what else happened this weekend here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, what happened today in Ashburn? A whole bunch of meetings. We'll see what Sam Fortier knows about them. It's Not My Beat next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. What do we got coming up this hour? Bunch of stuff. Doesn't really matter. Right now is the only thing that matters because we got a great guest, so let's get right to it, shall we? It's time for Not My Beat.
Live. This just in.
Not My Beat.
That great guest is Sam Fortier, the Washington Post beat reporter for the Commanders. Sam, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. My dad got after me because he listened to a podcast I did a couple weeks ago, and he said I said the word like too much. So I'm going to try to say that less in this radio appearance.
Okay, I like this for you. I just used like correctly in a perfectly acceptable format. That was unintentional, no pun intended. Let's see how this goes. So I'm going to start with a very simple question. As OTAs open today around the NFL and specifically for the Commanders, not the on-the-field stuff. So what happened today?
Basically, you start phase one, which is glorified stretching, and you're going to go through and learn the playbook. And it's really a big deal today because Eric Bieniemy gets to talk ball with his players for the first time, most notably Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. So those guys can get in there, try to learn the offense, and they can apply it when we get to phase two, phase three of OTAs, mandatory minicamp before summer break.
If Commander strength coach Chad Englehart heard you call phase one glorified stretching, would your life continue?
No, I think that his massive biceps would choke me out immediately, and so I would have to tap.
Yeah, no, I think they actually like work out. It's not allowed to be run by coaches. It's allowed to be run by strength coaches. So there's a lot of sleds. It's honestly great for social content. You got a lot of like sleds and med balls and stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe I was downplaying it a little bit, but I really still think there's not a lot of actual football work being accomplished. Like when you are watching them in week one, how much of this is going to show up? I don't know.
Right. No, 100%. So you did have something, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it feels like there's been a bit of mystery around exactly what Bieniemy is going to run. And you tweeted out earlier, hey, like this is their first chance to be with Eric Bieniemy in this West Coast system. Is that something that you've picked up from talking to folks? And what can you tell us about what Eric Bieniemy is going to be able to talk about with his guys, even if they can't get on the field and practice it yet?
Well, that is totally based on me asking Eric at his opening presser, how would you describe your offensive scheme? And he said, it's a West Coast scheme. And when you've talked to Ron Rivera at owners meetings or had conversations with people throughout the offseason, they've said, yeah, this is a West Coast scheme, a West Coast-based scheme. They're obviously going to fit it to the personnel. You know, Sam Howell wants to run a little bit more RPO if they want to use his legs. Obviously, they can adapt that as they did in Kansas City, but this is a primarily timing, horizontal, West Coast-based scheme. Is at least my understanding of how things are going to go.
So, as you know, so much of the what is the scheme is about, finer coaching points. There's a lot of overlap in actual, play concepts, et cetera. But it's the language. That's the thing that's huge. Like Scott Turner's old system was, from what I understand, at least a numbers-based system. There were some words in there, but it was a very numbers-based. This is a 7 route versus this is a post, or, those kinds of things that ultimately, when they work their way into the actual play calls, basically mean that the offense is speaking a different language. How much have you been able to gather about kind of what the approach is going to be to teach this new offense, or what Bieniemy's done in the past to teach, considering, Terry McLaurin knows how to run a go route, a post, an out. Sam Howell knows how to throw all of these routes. But as they come together in different concepts and what they're called, how does that process go to the best of your knowledge?
I think that's going to be the main focus of phase one of really this whole offseason program is, hey, we used to call this high-low, now we call it something else. This is how we're going to get accustomed to the verbiage of the scheme. I think the classroom work, the meetings, that's what you focus on right now. And hopefully by the time you get to training camp, when Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett's in the huddle saying, hey, this is the play call, everybody is up to speed and processing it a little bit faster. And obviously we know, if nothing else, Eric Bieniemy is a coach who harps on the details, is very regimented in that regard. So I think that you're going to see, that part of him come out early on.
Sam Fortier, Washington Post, with us here on the Team 980. So Chase Young is there. Montez Sweat is there. Obviously, Deron Payne there after getting his deal done. They don't have to worry about that. The same way that, like, the Giants are having to worry about Dexter Lawrence or Saquon Barkley not being in attendance. As far as Chase goes, how big of a deal is it that he's here for Phase 1?
It's a big deal because he wasn't healthy last year, and he skipped it in 2021 famously, decided to spend some time in LA working out in his zone, film some commercials. And so for him to be there, I think it is a big deal. And I think it's particularly a big deal because Ron Rivera wanted to see him there. Obviously, his fifth-year option is in limbo right now. They have until May 2nd to pick it up. But I think that what he sees over the next 2.5 weeks is going to play a role in how that decision gets made. I know Ron has talked about other things, health, motivation, new ownership, but I certainly expect his approach to these workouts, now that we know that he's there, is going to play a role.
So you genuinely believe Ron hasn't made up his mind yet, and this isn't buying time to get closer to the deadline and not make it look like it was a tough decision or anything, like get it off the Snyder's hands because they're close with Chase's family? Like, you genuinely think that Rivera hasn't made up his mind yet?
Well, I think that's a different discussion because it's possible that he feels very strongly one way or the other, and he's just using all of the string that he has to play out this decision. And those factors that you mentioned, I think, definitely could be involved. But I think that if you make that decision before, you're not giving him the benefit of the doubt or saying, hey, I want to see you there. I want to see you, focused and applying yourself and things like that. So this is just more motivation for him. And I think it's really fair to say, hey, if you need to motivate him by declining his option, like, is this a guy you want to commit to long-term anyway? Like, the fifth-year option is $17.5 million fully guaranteed for the 2024 season. Is that something you want to do if you're already concerned about his motivation? I think that's a totally fair question, but Ron Rivera obviously brought it up unprompted compared to the Deron Payne situation at the Super Bowl, so it's something that we obviously know is on his mind.
Right. And by the way, using all the time he has is a smart thing to do because if all of a sudden Chase looks incredible and changes your mind, so be it. But I guess my fear would also be, though, if I've already made my mind that it's not happening and I tell him, like, hey, man, if you show up and you bust it and, like, you look great, then you might get this. And then he does all that stuff and doesn't get that contract. Do you have any concerns about the Chase's kind of mindset at that point if he doesn't get this option picked up going into the final year, or is that, the flip side of the motivation? It's like, well, now you're playing for a contract for real.
Yeah, I just don't know if it would be a material difference. Like, we don't know that they've had that conversation where Ron says, hey, I want to see you show up and I want to do all these things, and that's going to play into your fifth-year option. So if that expectation isn't there, I don't think him coming in, if it's implicit, it's probably better because Ron hasn't set expectations, and whether he declines it or accepts it, it makes it less personal for Chase. And to me, Chase should want to be there anyway, and if he's going to be there and show up and put the work in, then that tells you what you need to know anyway. So I don't know if those conversations have a huge bearing. I don't think that would set their relationship up to tank if that conversation had happened because obviously they both just want to perform as best they can on the field this year anyway.
Sam Fortier, Washington Post, with us, Commanders beat reporter. Your colleague, Nikki Javala, was reporting on Montez Sweat. He's there for some of it, not participating in other parts, but it's not contract related. What can you tell us about Montez's status as he's also obviously looking for an extension?
Montez, to me, is in a group with Cam Curl, both guys that are up for extension, both guys that have played well. Obviously, Montez Sweat is a little bit different in the fact that he plays defensive line, a place that Washington has devoted a lot of resources to, and you almost certainly can't keep all four of those defensive linemen. So Montez and Chase are kind of interrelated in that way. Montez, I mean, he's sort of like Deron Payne in the sense that, his mindset, and Cam, honestly, too, those guys love playing football. And obviously, Deron was displeased that he had to sit out or chose to sit out in terms of contract negotiation leverage last year. Those things are still on the table for Montez and Cam, but it certainly would be a surprise to me, and I think that they would not enjoy it.
All right, last thing for Sam Fortier here is this. You thought we were going to get through without an ownership question, didn't you?
No, I absolutely did not think that.
Okay. Well, that's good because you're not going to. Although I'm gonna ask you the football adjacent one, which is now that we know that it's likely Josh Harris. What impact does, whether it's Harris or whoever else, but the fact that like we're moving towards being done, and that Ron said in his chat with Albert Breer that came out today, like he's wondering, hey, can I talk to the owner before the draft? Can I talk to this new person? Like, what impact does the fact that there is a new owner on the way and that person has been identified and theoretically agreed to by the team have on the next couple of weeks leading up to the draft, if any?
In a best case scenario, it means nothing, right? Like, as we've seen from Josh Harris's ownership of the Devils, of the Sixers, he hires, sports-specific people who are strong-minded and, in a lot of cases, the best in their field, whether it's Sam Hinkie or Daryl Morey, and he lets them do their thing. And I think if you're Josh Harris coming into the situation, the best thing you can do is just say, hey, Ron Rivera, you've been around this team for the last 3 years. I am going to trust your judgment, and this will be a part of your evaluation as I come in. One of the things that the fans in this market did not like was how much the past owner put his thumb on the scale. And so if Josh Harris came in and said, hey, I'm not going to do that, I think that would go a long way. And so if you're Ron Rivera, I know he talked about wanting to get, the potential new owner's input on Chase Young's fifth-year option, but to me it's the same thing. The less you do in year one, the more you sit and watch, and the less you are an active participant. Not only is it better for you probably in terms of the fans, but it's also a cleaner evaluation process, because if you let Ron make his draft picks, if you let him decide on Chase Young and you get to the end of the year and you say, oh, these decisions either did or did not work, I didn't have any influence on it, I now know whether to keep Ron or to fire him, and so on and so forth.
That is a really, really good point. Sam Fortier, Washington Post, with us. Also, by the way, Sam, I'll just go ahead and tell you this over the phone as opposed to you seeing it when you hang up and get on Twitter. Sportico just reported that the NFL has received the terms of the deal between Josh Harris and Dan Snyder for review as the sale moves one step closer to completion. Next, the league will review the deal and return it to the parties for alteration or, if approved, signatures. So we're one step closer, Sam. We did it.
I don't know if we could say we did it yet, but one step closer to this being finalized and moving on to football and stadium and all those other things will be a welcome addition.
Indeed. All right, Sam Fortier, everybody, read him at WashingtonPost.com/sports. Talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Sam Fortier with us, and Anthony, I think we need to go back through that interview and we need to figure out how many times Sam said like. We need to do like a tape review on that, send it to Sam, give him the feedback, and apparently send it to Sam's dad as well, because apparently Pops is concerned.
So we're at 12.
You counted?
No.
Okay.
I got you, though.
You did. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you would do. That'd be quality producing.
I mean, I wish I could have been doing that. I was watching out for Twitter for the Sportico news, but also trying to upload Hour 1. So
You got a lot going on.
Yeah, I couldn't do 3 things. I thought I could do 3, but
it depends on the 3. That's a very active. You got to sit there with your little tally and be like 1, 2, 3. All right, we'll react to Sportico news again. One step closer to a deal being finalized. More on that, and Eben Novy-Williams is going to join us from Sportico later in the show to talk about that as well. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we have breaking news. Oh, Anthony, I mean, that means we should go full on breaking news, shouldn't we? Here we go. Hey, up.
Breaking news. Oh, snap! News is broken. Breaking news.
That's how we do it. Sportico has exclusively learned that the NFL has received the terms of the deal between Josh Harris and Dan Snyder for review as the sale moves one step closer to completion. Next, the league will review the deal and return it to the parties for alteration or, if approved, signatures. So this will get past a lot of, I think, some of the details that we have been working. If, someone can obviously, and this is by Scott Soshnick, who is Eben's, Eben's partner at Sportico. But Eben Novy-Williams from Sportico, who's been involved in all this reporting, is going to join us here in just a few minutes to discuss. But basically, the next piece of reporting that needs to drop is like, okay, what are the details? What actually is in here in terms of price? Obviously, there's been reports that it was 5.8. There's been reports that it's 6.05. Most people say it's 6.05. I'm going to go 6.05. I also am curious on the indemnity stuff. Is that even mentioned at all? What kind of legal repercussions? Or legal protection does Dan Snyder have, if any? Because it seems like something the league would also be involved in. I'm sure there's like little details that have to get worked out that are, league standard language that maybe Harris and Snyder's lawyers didn't get exactly right. There could be little things like that. Certainly, you'd have to think there was some advisement from the league along the way, but I actually don't know how much that is. Like, it seems like this process was so done in, like, on the outside in Snyder's inner circle between Snyder and whoever was representing, Harris and Rails and Magic and their lawyers and representatives, that it didn't involve the league at all. This wasn't something that was very well, I won't say thought out, but like very well involved with the people that would eventually have to approve it. That's not to say that there weren't very capable people involved, because Bank of America has, and I'm sure whatever firm that Josh Harris used, if he, we heard that Jeff Bezos hired Allen and Company as a firm that was going to represent him on like the banking and kind of finance, legal, whatever side of it. Whoever Josh Harris used, and this is a man who, again, has bought 2 other sports franchises in the last decade here in the States and others overseas. Like, they know what they're doing. They know how to do this. But there are things that I'm sure are specific to the NFL that have to get hashed out. I hope, and I'm sure all of you do, that this happens fairly quickly and that there isn't a lot of alteration that has to happen in the deal, that whatever terms around the legal coverage and whatever else was agreed upon is to the NFL's liking, because the faster that gets agreed on and signed, one, the closer it is to, never having to hear Steve Apostolopoulos' name again. Certainly not Brian Davis's name. Cannot believe that got reported on Friday. We'll go into just how silly that report was if you saw the $7 billion cash offer. Like, Dan Snyder wouldn't have accepted that in 5 seconds. What are we doing? That we never have to hear about that again. Except for when going, hey, that was weird. Remember when that happened? Remember Steve Apostolopoulos? So one, the non-exclusive nature of the agreement is closed. 2, it's faster till Dan Snyder's gone. Which at this point, whether you are one of the last people defending Dan or the army of folks who was ready to see him gone a decade ago, the finality of this and him no longer being in charge of the team gets done faster the faster this is signed. Realistically, the league could call a special session and have owners just fly to New York and get it done. But by the time all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and the legal lease gets done, the chances are they'll be pushing to get this done by Minneapolis anyway. But the fact that we're well beyond verbal agreement That this isn't just like, yeah, Josh, I'm choosing you. Your offer is the one that we want. That there is, and obviously there had to be some sense of writing and an official bid and all that kind of stuff anyway. But they're like, your bid's the winning bid. Let's get together this weekend and work on the agreement and make sure it's ready to go. And that here we are, announcement Thursday last week, April 13th. By Monday, April 17th, we have something in the league's hands. That is it feels like the fastest thing that has happened throughout this entire process. Because for the most part, this thing is slogged on. For the most part, this thing has moved at a snail's pace. But now we're here. We're at the end. It seems like there's a little bit more forward momentum. And the chance for this thing to be done by the owners' meetings in Minneapolis feels a lot more real today than even it did Thursday, Friday, as people were still trying to figure out exactly the nature of where we were in the process. So, again, the breaking news that we have for you.
Breaking news. Oh, snap, news is broken. Breaking news.
Sportico reporting that the NFL has received the terms of the deal between Josh Harris and Dan Snyder for review as the sale moves one step closer to completion. Next, the league will review the deal and return it to the parties for alteration or, if approved, signatures. Once signed by Dan Snyder and Josh Harris, the finalized deal will be resubmitted to the NFL for final approval from its owners. And that final approval is what we anticipate happening in Minneapolis coming up at the end of next month. As for Ron Rivera's place in all of this, he spoke extensively for the first time since the news to Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer over the weekend. We will get you the highlights of that conversation next. The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Very interesting column, story, some combo of the two from Albert Breer, Sports Illustrated, earlier today, as he becomes the first member of the media to have an extensive on-the-record conversation with Ron Rivera since the announcement of the Commander's sale. Some very interesting stuff on here. Some of it, to be honest, as we'll get to, sounded like Ron may have heard some of the things I said over the last couple of months. We'll get there. But all in all, I think this is a good interview for Rivera. It's a great get by Breer. And let's go through it. Apparently, and there's also, by the way, some confirmation of some things that I thought was interesting that kind of gets lost in the details. But off we go. And I'll actually read the start of this. I'm going to summarize a lot. But it was Thursday, and Commanders coach Ron Rivera was behind his desk watching tape when the news got across to him the same way it got to the rest of the world, through news reports. So Rivera paused the tape. He was watching receivers, and TCU's Quentin Johnson was on the screen, and gave himself a moment before doing any fact-finding on his own, just as the cell phone sitting nearby on his desk started to blow up. Word was finally the franchise was being sold, with the initial report from the sports business site Sportico having it going to D.C. area native Josh Harris for $6 billion. Rivera then described it to Breer as bittersweet. Real quick before we get into that, here was kind of the interesting TikTok back and forth that kind of gets buried here. It's not highlighted as a TikTok type of story, but it's a good job by Breer to sneak it in there. It wasn't long before the enormity of it sunk in, or in Rivera's mind started to become official, after the Snyders gave word to team president Jason Wright, and Wright then passed the facts along to the team's coaches. And yes, for Rivera, there's absolutely a sense of relief in the transaction that everyone's been waiting to get finalized. So it sounds like, as word got out from whatever sources that Sportico had, and then others quickly followed up with, that quickly word was given to Jason Wright, like, hey, this is real. We agreed. It's Harris. Can you continue to disseminate the information from there? And then Jason called Ron and was like, hey, you might be seeing this already, but it's done. That's how these things tend to happen, especially when the sources are kind of ready to go, greased up and ready to go. Like, as I'm sure Sportico had someone that was like, hey, you're involved in this process. As soon as it gets to the point that you're allowed to, you call me. And that's what happened. And so as soon as the people inside knew, so did Sportico. And then next thing you know, the Snyders, who are busy doing the deal, can't tell people fast enough. Jason can't. And Ron winds up learning in the news, because that's just how information spreads. So I thought that was interesting. And the fact that they did have a more official thing, kind of chain of command communication pretty quickly, I think is also interesting, because I could also see a world where Dan and Tanya didn't tell anybody, and it just was floating out there, and everybody's like, I don't know. So at least that was handled, quote unquote, well. So Rivera uses that word bittersweet, and he says, I know I'll get bashed for this, and then talks about how Snyder has been great to him personally. And what I appreciate from Ron there, and why I will not crush him in the way that some people thought I went overboard when Jerry Richardson died, and Ron put out a very, very nice statement about Richardson that was completely ignorant, or not ignorant, but completely left out the whole reason why Richardson no longer owns the Carolina Panthers in the first place, which is that he was accused of, and certainly was guilty of, some sexual harassment, and also using unacceptable language along racial lines / racist language multiple times, and that's why he no longer owned the team. And Ron's like, this guy's awesome. And it's like, hey, man, I know he was nice to you, but I think it's important when you're a leader to step up and be like, yeah, he treated me well, but it's important that you treat everyone well. Or at least acknowledge that there's another side to the story. And so even by Ron saying, like, I'm going to get bashed for this, I will say, like, okay, you acknowledge the other stuff, but you're also allowed to have your own personal life experience. And I just would like the respect that one person's experience isn't the totality of someone else. And especially when the way you've been treated in Ron's case is a minority opinion that most people who have worked for Dan Snyder over the years do not come away saying, like, yes, he was very nice to me, even if he might have done a nice thing for me one or two times. I think that's important context. Ron talked about for Richardson how, like, you know, when his house burned down, he called him immediately and was like, do I need to advance you money? Is there anything I can do? Talked about with Dan, like when Ron got sick, like Dan was there and was helpful. And when Ron's mom passed away recently, like Dan made sure that he had private jet to go back and forth to California to be there for the funeral and be there for his dad. And like, I will say this about Dan Snyder. I've heard similar stories about that exact kind of thing. Like if someone is in trouble, Dan that is close to Dan and Dan has a genuine relationship with, he is incredibly generous. Unfortunately, when you're super rich and do nice things that most of us would do if we had that kind of money, then you don't get special bonus points. And it certainly doesn't, just because you have the wherewithal to make it like, instead of you can borrow my car is you can borrow my plane. It's still very nice, but it doesn't mean that if you treat people horribly that overrides it. You don't get to wash that away because of your money. And I also thought it was interesting that, and I appreciate Breer asking this, like both Rivera and Richardson were accused of treating women poorly, or at the very least having environments where women were treated poorly. And it's a weird, I have mixed feelings on Ron's answer. I think some of this is generational, and I'll give Ron the benefit of the doubt on his intent here, although I will provide some commentary on how it could be better. Ron points out that he hired his own daughter, or that his daughter got hired. She works in the social media department. There's some nepotism there that just flies by that I think is like, But he says, like, the fact that my daughter worked both at Carolina and here, you better damn well know that I'm not going to let that bleeping bleep happen when she's around, he said with real emotion. That was my attitude. I was going to be protective. If I saw it, it didn't matter who did it. I was going to put an end to it, and that really helped. Secondly, through having my wife and daughter around, it was always trying to make sure I treated them the right way. And that's where, again, I'll give Rivera the credit of his intent here. He's saying, like, yeah, you're going to treat everyone around here with respect. I'm going to shut it down if I don't see it. I'm going to set an example with my wife and daughter. But I just think it's important, and I would say this kindly, like, when it comes to treating women with respect, they're their own people. It doesn't matter if they're your daughter, wife, someone's daughter, someone's this. Like, it's a human being who's a woman. Treat her with respect. You don't have to be about the proximity to a man. But I understand that's a generational thing that as we get better as a society about discussing these issues that some people know, some people don't, is that's a really important thing to kind of frame. So I'll give Ron the credit there that he did come in and change the way that building operated for the better. And it leads to kind of a larger conversation that Logan and I got into today on Take Command as well. That's the crux of the Breer article, is that, like, he says it's bittersweet. He acknowledges that obviously a lot of people went through a lot of things, and there's a reason why we're here. But for him personally, it's bittersweet because Dan has actually been good to him and given him the tools that he needs. So, okay, fine, is what it is. But we touched about this on Take Command today. We might play this part of the conversation tomorrow. And we talked about this with Michael Phillips last week as well, how at the end of the day, whenever Ron's time is up here and whenever Jason Wright's time is up here, whether that be later this year because Josh Harris is ready to bring in his own people, or whether that be in 5 years or 10 years in Jason's case. Ron obviously doesn't have that much time left as an NFL head coach, at least I would think. I mean, who knows? Maybe he pulls a Belichick and he coaches into his 70s. But, Jason's 40. Like, if he wants to, if theoretically, if he does a good job, could he be around the next 20 years? Yeah, he could. But these are two men that took on two of the worst jobs in the NFL. Someone's got to do them. They signed up for it, and especially, I mean, really in both of their cases, they didn't have to. Jason was doing very well at McKinsey. Ron had probably would have had other options, and he certainly, knew what he was signing up for in terms of you got to change the culture. Well, that means it's kind of bad, and you better understand why. And to pretend like it's not Dan's fault, and it was just like, oh, well, they got rid of Bruce Allen, and now it's my job to pick whatever this is up out of the ashes. That's silly. Like, clearly the owner has something to do with it. But while they misstepped along the way, while they have not done perfect jobs, largely they have been successful at the very specific tasks they were supposed to do. Jason really messed up a couple of things. I think the rebrand was done poorly in terms of the announcement. Obviously, the name is very unpopular. Some of that stuff was probably not really on Jason. The Sean Taylor stuff has been dreadful and embarrassing for the organization, for Jason, for everyone that was under Jason that worked on it. And that stuff honestly annoys me because it feels like that was preventable. Ron has had errors with timeouts, many errors with quarterbacks, many errors in other personnel decisions. But he has changed the culture. And Jason has gotten the team on a much better financial track. And it looks like a much more professional operation than it was when he took over. And so while I'm not saying they should have statues built for them, I'm not saying their jerseys should be retired, I'm not saying that fans owe an endless debt of gratitude to those two, I will say that they probably can say mission accomplished. Maybe not mission crushed, but mission accomplished considering the difficulty of the mission is pretty impressive. And now we'll see if they get to continue to build under better circumstances and kind of what they are ultimately capable of. Again, the news from Sportico is that the deal between Josh Harris and Dan Snyder has been submitted to the NFL. Just more evidence that the very silly report that came out Friday night about a $7 billion offer was not true. But for entertainment's sake, we'll dive into just how silly it is next. And then Ian Eagle is going to join us ahead of Game 2 of Kings-Warriors tonight. He's got the call on TNT. He also works for Yes Network, where he called Game 1 of the Sixers and the Nets. They also play tonight. Also, he does the NFL on CBS, so we'll get his thoughts on the Snyder sale. So Ian coming up at 6. Silly breakdown of a silly story next. And more of your calls later in the show, 301-230-0980. Also, Evan Novi-Williams is going to join us later in the show as well from Sportico to give us the details on this latest step in the process. That's all to come on the Team 980. First, let's tell you what's trending. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. Ian Eagle joins us at the top of the hour, talking Kings, Warriors, talking about the Commanders sale as well. Also talking about the Nets-Sixers series. So the two games tonight, some NFL. But right now, our pleasure to welcome in a very, very busy man. It is Eben Novy-Williams of Sportico. You guys had more news. Appreciate the heads up on that, by the way.
Of course.
We appreciate that. Nice little back channel we've got so we can plan things. So we told the audience the general nature of the news, that the deal has been submitted to the league. What more can you tell us? What can you flesh out about that report?
I think the big headline here is that this is an incremental step forward for this sale. And if this was any other transaction, Craig, I think you and I probably would not be talking about this. It really is a step that is fairly perfunctory. But in this specific sale, for all the reasons that Commanders fans are all too familiar with, this is a big step because it does indicate that Dan is still planning to go forward with this $6 billion sale to the Josh Harris group. So the NFL will look at this, make sure that there's nothing in this deal that is really untoward, that is surprising, that it violates league rules. This is not the process that vets Josh and his LPs to make sure that they're good to join the club. That comes a little bit later.
Okay.
But this is the first preliminary look at pricing, financing, who's involved, etc. After which the NFL says, you guys are good to go. And then the next step from after that is essentially putting names on paper. And then once this deal is signed, then I think Commanders fans can really breathe a sigh of relief. But we're getting closer and closer by the day.
Yeah, LPs, limited partners, for those that are wondering what that meant. So one step closer to this being signed, and that was the thing that kind of caught my eye from Scott's reporting, your colleague at Sportico, is that, you know, if they like this deal, if the NFL approves it, it goes back for signatures. And at that point, like, yes, there is still more to be done in terms of finalization, vetting, all that kind of stuff. But it's closer to being signed and kind of closing the door on all of this other silliness that is happening around this deal. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Because that's the other thing. This feels like, oh, wow, they could have some signatures in place soon. Maybe Minneapolis is definitely in play for that finalization.
I think Minneapolis is definitely in play. I don't know if this is a step that's going to take the NFL a day or if it's going to take the NFL a few days, but for a lot of reasons, the league wants this sale to happen, right? And not only do they have that motivation, but Josh is a very established, well-known sports investor who's already a minority owner of an NFL team with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the league is very familiar with him, and the league wants to get this deal done. So I think for those two reasons, my guess is this is not going to be a very long process from the NFL, either on this go around, or if we get to the point where it's time to vet Josh and his group, I don't think that's going to be a very complex process either. I think that both of those things are going to lack surprises.
What Eben Novy-Williams, Sportico, is our guest here. What, if anything, like from the technicalities of the deal, could the NFL send back? Like, what are the things that are on the table, I guess, for them to review? Is my question.
I think the easiest way to describe it is to make sure that this deal doesn't violate league rules in any way, right? So a good example is private equity, right? All these other leagues are allowing private equity funds to buy up stakes in teams. The NFL doesn't. So, and I can't imagine this would be true, but if 6th Street suddenly was 20% of this group, the NFL would say, wait a second, I'm not sure if we agree with that.
Right.
Pricing is another one, right? The NFL does care about how much its teams sell for. $6 billion, maybe a bit lower than I think some NFL owners thought Dan was going to get, or maybe lower than Dan probably would have gotten if this team had been run a little differently over the past decade or two. But I don't think the $6 billion price is at a point, is not so low that anyone's going to say we don't want this deal to happen. So there's things like that. It's just making sure that as lawyers go through the contract, there's no glaring red flags. There's no publicly traded companies involved, things like that. And financing, right? The league also wants to make sure that that the people who are buying the team have enough money, right? And how much debt is the group taking on? The league is very strict about that. There's a certain amount, I believe it's $1 billion that a new owner can have. So just making sure that the rest is in cash, who has it. There's rules around the control owner. In this case, it's going to be Josh, needs to hold a certain amount of equity himself, right? So making sure all those little bars are hit Those are all rules that Josh and his group, I assure you, are well aware of. So again, I don't think that this is, I would be shocked if there was any surprises here. And again, in a lot of sales, if this was the Ottawa Senators, I don't think we'd even be talking about an agreement in principle being sent to the NHL for the final checklist. It just is especially notable because even after a deal got reached last week, Craig, which you and I talked about, there were still people talking to us about, you just never know with Dan, right? This seems like it's done, but more so than any other owner, this guy could back out at any moment.
Yeah. If it was the Senators, then we could actually talk about Steve Apostopoulos. Instead, his name could just keep coming up in this sale for no freaking reason. So the other piece that is kind of floating out there that seems like a big potential hurdle, depending on who you talk to, is the indemnification piece. Obviously, Washington Post has continued to report that. They're the Washington Post, so I do not doubt them, but it seems like they have been on that, obviously, more than others, which to me says, someone that Mark Maskey or Nikki or Liz is talking to that is an NFL owner and is someone who is in a position to be worried, is very worried. And the other people reporting on this are not necessarily talking to that same person, whoever that may be. That is me recklessly speculating, reading the tea leaves. But is the indemnification, but regardless, I would say, like, who's responsible when the team gets sued and that kind of stuff, like, that does have to be worked out. So is that part of what's potentially under review in this deal, or is that kind of the next phase?
It very well might be. To be totally honest, to your point about who's talking to who, I have not had many conversations with people about the indemnification situation. And I've kind of always thought that part of that was going to be a decision that gets made when the NFL suddenly has the specter of Dan leaving on the table, right? That there's a little bit of that I think gets hard to answer until the deal is as close to signed as we are right now. So I assume we're going to find, and if it's Sportico, great. If it's the Washington Post, also great. I think we're going to have some news, I think, fairly soon about what that situation is like for Dan and what he's leaving around with the NFL in terms of the legal qualifications. The conversations I have had in the past with NFL owners, it was a non-starter for them. But again, that's a situation that I think it's easy to say it's a non-starter, 8 months before a deal gets done. And then when you're staring at this being the final hurdle between having a new owner of the Commanders and maybe ridding yourself of Dan Snyder, I do wonder if the non-starter becomes a starter of some sort for some owners. So to be totally honest, I don't have an answer on that. I have not heard much about where that process stands, but that it would not shock me if that's part of what the NFL is thinking about right now.
The non-starter becomes a finisher. Just save that line. I don't need my byline on the story. Everyone who's watching, listening right now will know. But when that's in your story, when that happens, when the non-starter became a finisher, that was me.
There you go, Craig. Yeah.
Excellent. Eben Novy-Williams, everybody, Sportico. Read it, sportico.com. Also, I know you guys just recorded a pod, so there'll be more out. Business of Sports podcast, I have that right?
It's the Sporticast.
The Sporticast, okay. There's too many podcasts out there. I've got like 3 on my own. There's way too many podcasts
I know, but we have the only good ones, you and I.
Now we're talking. Eben Novy-Williams, everybody. Ian Eagle is next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And final hour of the show. Still weird to say that at 6 o'clock because normally we're done. But a couple weeks ago, we got the change. If you're just getting back from vacation or something, we're 4 to 7 now. And I'm finally getting used to it. But that today gave us a fantastic opportunity to talk to my good friend from the NFL on CBS. And more importantly, I guess, for his job today, the NBA on TNT. It is Ian Eagle. Ian, hello, sir. How are you? How's Sacramento?
Hey, Craig. This is weird to talk to you in this hour. This is not normally the case. I like it, though. It fits. It works.
It does. It does. I like everything but the very late dinner time. That's honestly, like, my day feels less compressed, but then I get home and it's like 7:30, and that I don't know what to do with.
Oh, that's not bad. You're going to adjust to it. It's just a different shift to your stomach. It's going to be cake. I mean, don't eat cake for dinner, but it's
probably good. You just, I've known you now for over a decade since I was in school, and you just keep giving me good advice, like don't eat cake for dinner.
Well, I actually don't listen to my own advice. I have had cake for dinner, and it's pretty glorious.
Yeah, that's true. I guess every once in a while, All right, that's enough. We should probably get going, shall we? So, Ian, of course, NBA on TNT. He's got Game 2 of the Kings-Warriors series tonight. We'll get to that in a second. But first, just real quick, put your NFL hat, or more specifically for CBS, I guess, the blazer on. When you heard the news of the sale finally being agreed to last week for the Commanders, what was your immediate reaction and thought?
Immediate reaction and thought was happiness for the fan base, closure, hopefully in many ways, because this chapter has not been pretty, and there was no sign that it was going to get any better. If anything, it was getting uglier. I have no idea if any of those situations that are currently still under investigation would be rectified, if they just get pushed to the background. The reality for Washington football fans is it's time to turn the page, and new leadership, new philosophy. It is one of those things that, having done this now for so many years, play-by-play on the local level, on the national level, there is a cause and effect. It's not as simple to say you could have bad ownership, but really good players or a really good front office. Eventually, it catches up to you. If things are not being done the right way at the top of the organization, it will filter down, and it has filtered down. So the hope now is new blood and a new perspective will mean some different results, or at the very least, a team that fans can be proud of moving forward.
No doubt about it. Ian Eagle, NFL on CBS, and of course, the NBA on TNT. Also mentioned the play-by-play on the local level, is the main play-by-play man for the Brooklyn Nets. And you had Game 1 of that series, which is also tonight on TNT for Game 2. You had it on Yes over the weekend. Thought it was really interesting, the strategy that the Nets employed, really going hard, doubling Embiid basically right off the catch immediately. A lot of analysts had said maybe the play is to go the exact opposite way. Let Embiid get 50 and wear himself out, but don't let anyone else get off. What'd you make of the strategy, and what do you think Jacques Vaughn does in Game 2?
Yeah, it was certainly a choice, and they committed to it because you could tell right away this was the way they were going to go about their business. They were going to live by it. They were going to die by it. And in Game 1, they died by it. Everybody else made shots James Harden couldn't miss from three-point territory. Basically, everybody contributed in some way before they emptied the bench for Philadelphia. There was a role for everyone, and they felt like they were part of it, and that's the benefit of having a dominant MVP in Joel Embiid. More often than not, you'll see teams change. If it's not working, the Nets decided to stick with it, and then the lead ballooned. Late third quarter, early fourth quarter, you could sense, okay, this one is over, game one is done, and what are the Nets going to do in game two? I think they could probably go with the same general approach, although there might be some adjustments and changes to committing to it full time. But I think there is also a belief that Philadelphia is not going to replicate what they did from three-point territory. And, you know, unfortunately for the Nets, I don't know if they're going to have another game where they shoot it at nearly 60% from the field. All of the offensive numbers were really good for Brooklyn. They just could not stop Philly, and they couldn't control Philly on the offensive glass. So that's a huge issue. I think that has to change, obviously, body on body. But when you double team, you're being put out of position to do the things you normally do on the defensive glass. And that's what clearly affected the Nets over the course of that game. It was frustrating, I'm sure, from the Nets' perspective, Jacques Vaughn's perspective. I'm curious, just like everybody else, if this is going to be the same thought process or if they make some clear market changes for this game based on the results of game one.
Just generally on the Nets real quick before we get to your game tonight, Warriors and Kings, they had one of the most tumultuous seasons that in recent NBA history for anybody, with the stuff in the summer and then, okay, wow, Nets kind of really finding their groove with KD and Kyrie. Kyrie blows it all up with the trade request. They ultimately decide to trade Kevin. And then they get back this really nice group of young players. Mikal Bridges has 30 in game one. We see what he's developed into. What's just the general feeling around the Nets after all of that? From the outside, it feels like it's kind of subsided, a lot of the tumult, and maybe there's a more sustainable future ahead. But what has it been to be around that team? And, you know, you've been with that organization for 25 years at this point. You know everybody. What's kind of the general feel inside the Nets after all of this?
Yeah, the sense I got once the deals were consummated, there was a general exhale from the organization because it was daily drama, and it had gotten to the point where they could no longer control it. They thought team was playing well. Kyrie was looking like the guy they needed him to look like, and certainly was making a case for possibly being a part of the team long term, although I'm not sure that was ever determined on the Nets side of things. They wanted to play it out and see how the team fared. Durant was injured, so when the deals actually happened, KD was not in the lineup. And ironically, a year earlier when James Harden was dealt, it was the same situation. Things ran amok when KD was not around, and the team wasn't winning as consistently. More pressure shifted to Harden and to Kyrie. Kyrie was a part-time player last season. This year, again, the pressure shifted to Kyrie. He was the guy everybody focused in on, and the Nets would win one, lose one, win two, lose two, win one, lose two, every combination you could think of. But they were still among the top seeds in the Eastern Conference. And the general feeling was if KD came back, they would vie for a championship as constituted. Once Kyrie decided he wanted out because he was not going to get the extension, that was it. The dominoes fell, and the Nets at that point determined they couldn't go back. They couldn't possibly go back to what the original plan was. So to get out of that situation with some key players and Bridges, who looks like a star, and chemistry, I mean, that's the other part that we sometimes forget in the NBA, probably more so than any other sport. You got five guys on the floor at the same time. If you've got players that don't want to be there, that don't want to be a part of it, that don't buy in, it will eventually hurt you. And the Nets finally have a group that likes playing with one another. I don't know if they have the horses right now, but at least they think they've got a little something to build on. They're going to have to find another star. no doubt about it. And I think they know that. The question is, how do you do it in the current NBA climate? And who's the type of personality that they want to bring in with this group?
Yep, they got a lot of picks, which definitely helps that as well. Iron Eagle, NBA on TNT. All right, we'll end with your game tonight. Get you in the mind frame because tip-off's only like 4 hours away. Kings and Warriors. Game one was super interesting to watch. Both Steph and Clay hit a bunch of shots late. Tremendous shot making all around. Malik Monk goes nuts for the Kings. What from what you saw in game one feels like it will define this series versus something that may have been a little bit more blip on the radar?
Well, I think both teams feel good, believe it or not, despite the fact Golden State lost the game. They had a chance to take the lead late on a Wiggins three, didn't make it. Had a chance to tie the game at the end of regulation. Steph Curry didn't make it. They lose the game to Sacramento in game one, but feel as if they're right there. And, this team couldn't win on the road this year. This is not an anomaly. I think there's a perception, it's the NBA, you just flip the switch and everything goes back to normal. They were terrible on the road this year. They won 11 games on the road. So I know they were favored in this series, but the idea that they would just be able to show up and get a win in that kind of environment, despite the resume, despite the championships, it's just not that simple. So I think Steve Kerr and company believe they can make some adjustments, and clearly they can't allow Monk to do what he did. But I think Sabonis will play better. Sabonis didn't shoot it well. In fact, it was his worst shooting game of the season. All-star this year. He's going to be better. I don't know if they get the same bench production in Sacramento that they did in game one, and then flip it. The Kings have to be thrilled. Everybody talked about their lack of experience and having never been on this stage and taking on the defending champions. But they've got Mike Brown as their head coach, and it's interesting to think about just on a personal level. 1 year ago, I went in to do a Warriors playoff game. We're waiting literally in our little green room area to talk to Steve Kerr. And a tweet gets posted that Steve had tested positive for COVID. He will not be coaching. And then 5 minutes later, Mike Brown walks into the room in that role. And at that point, there were still rumors about Sacramento, and it looked like it was going to happen, although it wasn't official. And Mike Brown coached the team that night. And we know eventually what happened. Kerr returned. They win the championship. Brown goes on to become the head coach of the Sacramento Kings, and it turned out to be a terrific choice. He's going to win Coach of the Year in the NBA. So a lot of the things that the Warriors have done, the Kings are doing. Very similar. They've added some wrinkles, Mike Brown wrinkles defensively, although that hasn't been a successful category this season for Sacramento. But, Craig, it's a truly intriguing first-round series, and it's funny, walking around this area today, the excitement level. I think initially when the Kings drew the Warriors, the first reaction from Kings faithful was, no. The team played so well this year. This is the reward to take on the defending champions. But they've now warmed to the idea that this NorCal matchup is one that people are paying attention to, and people are learning about the Kings. It's such a high-profile series. I think the general NBA fan or someone that's just stumbling upon the playoffs is now more interested in the Kings than they would have been if it was just a run-of-the-mill first-round series.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And as someone who's even watches as much NBA basketball as I do, it took until game one for me to know that Alex Len was still in the league. That is the nature of the Kings season. But all of a sudden you're like, whoa. And they're a very, very, very fun team. One of the best offenses in the league, obviously. On the Warriors side of it, I'm curious. I don't know how much time you've gotten to spend around them this year. You've obviously, you spend most of your time doing the Nets games, but then you have the national slate with TNT as well. But there's kind of this thought that, or two, I guess, conflicting thoughts. One is that there's something that's been off about the chemistry of that team all year, and it goes back to the punch between Draymond and Jordan Poole, and more so that it came out than the actual, behind the scenes, hey, that happens, and it probably happens more than anybody knows about. But then there's also this thought that if they could just get Andrew Wiggins back, which he is, and Gary Payton back, which he also played and was fairly good and effective in doing his Gary Payton, the second things in game one, that they would be fine. And I'm curious, being around the team, especially the last couple of days since you got out to Sacramento and started prepping for this game, but also any other interactions you had with them this season, where you are on those two storylines that seemingly conflict, because one says, hey, this is off, and they shouldn't be the favorites that everyone is making them out to be, and the other says, hey, no, it's just a matter of time, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I've had them a few times this year, and Steve Kerr is about as good as it gets when you sit down with him in a production meeting. He's straightforward, he's honest, he's direct, but he also is savvy. He worked in the media and was about the best analyst out there doing both NBA and college, and took over this job and succeeded right away. So when you're a champion in your first year as a head coach, the perception is you have all the answers all the time. Well, now he's won a bunch more on the championship level. And by his own admission, I don't think he would tell you to your face that I know everything that you need to know in order to do this job well. He's still learning. He's still developing the philosophy that's going to get him into the Hall of Fame as a head coach. But the conversations we had earlier this season, he was honest about things, that it isn't just a simple fix or get one guy back and it's all better, but he was very positive and encouraging in regards to his team. He thought that, as you laid out, getting Wiggins back, getting Payton in there, him knowing the system, the addition of DiVincenzo, the maturity, hopefully, of Poole and Kuminga, and then the championship pedigree of Curry and Thompson and Green would put them right in the thick of things. So I never sensed from him in the previous production meetings that we had that it was woe is me and it's just unfair how this season has gone. He was always very bullish on what this team could do once the regular season was over and they got into the playoffs. I'm not sure, how this matchup in their own mind went, if they thought this was the right one to play Sacramento. You can play games and tricks on yourself by trying to secure a specific seed, and then you look up and say, well, wait a second, why do we do this? Phoenix and the Clippers, everybody was criticizing Tyronn Lue for not looking at the math in the final game. Well, wait a second. If New Orleans loses and you lose, well, you can move down to the 6th spot and play Sacramento as opposed to Phoenix. And ultimately, I think Tyronn Lue said, hey, the team's got to go out and win games. And the matchup is the matchup. If you're good enough, you're going to have to beat a lot of good teams in the NBA playoffs. The issue is whether or not you have to beat them consecutively. And in Golden State's case, they were going to play a good team no matter what. And it just happened to be this young, dynamic Sacramento team that obviously this area has been waiting for this opportunity. 17 years, Craig. That's a long time in professional sports to not have a playoff game. And to do it the way that they did it the other night was something to behold.
No doubt, and you get to be in the middle of it all tonight. The atmosphere was incredible. Game 2 tonight, 10 o'clock on TNT. All right, last question, which is a half-joking question, but a half-serious question after the events of the weekend with Giannis getting injured on a play where he's kind of undercut by Kevin Love. Should we ban charges forever? Should the NBA ban the charge?
No. I understand people reacting, and this happens a lot when you have injuries of this sort and it's the first day or 2 days of the NBA playoffs, and now we want to overcompensate. But this is a part of the game, asking players to defend, and yes, these are athletic freaks, both offensively and defensively. So things are going to happen, and it's truly unfortunate when it happens to a big-time player, but it's part of the game. And in my mind, it's been a little bit silly to even go in that direction. You have to have some potential of a defensive mindset in this league, or we're looking at games that resemble the All-Star game from this past season that nobody liked. So, no. To answer it bluntly, no.
I think there needs to be severe changes. You can't ban the charge, but I do think it's something that needs to be looked at, which is what I'm going to talk about next, Ian. They call that a tease in the business.
Oh, what a tease, Craig. See, I knew this 6 o'clock hour was going to be good for you. Perfect.
It's all come full circle. Ian Eagle, everybody. TNT tonight, 10 o'clock, Kings, Warriors. Thank you, sir. Always appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
All right, Craig.
See
all
you,
the
buddy.
best.
Okay, Ian Eagle, of course, NFL and CBS as well, had great thoughts on the Snyder stuff to start that, all the Nets, Sixers stuff, which is the first game tonight, and then Kings, Warriors, great stuff from Ian. I do think the NBA shouldn't ban charges, but they should ban the charges that currently exist. We'll get to that and a rapid fire we're going through every series of the NBA playoffs next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right. Let's get to the NBA playoffs, and let's start, Anthony, with let's just go Eastern Conference, Western Conference. We got to do this all in one segment.
So I'd rather end on a good note. Let's start with the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Oh, also, I want to do the Chargers thing first.
Oh, yeah, we can definitely get into the Chargers.
Because you and I are both hoops guys. Like, we're big hoops junkies. And also, by the way, if you're watching on the stream, this happens. We need a lights coordinator because I got a nice light to make me look pretty, and then it gets dark out behind me, and then it's just like glowing off my face. We don't need all that. Again, you can watch the show and see me struggle at youtube.com/@theteam980. But Giannis gets hurt. He looks like he's gonna be all right. He's got an MRI that came back clean. The Bucks are optimistic about his status. But it comes on a play where Kevin Love just scoots on in, hands on his chest, falls over. And I have been ranting about this for over a decade. I hate that play so much and think it should be legislated out of basketball. That is not to say that offensive fouls need to go forever and that charges can't exist in some form. I just think an offensive foul should have to be an offensive foul. If I run you over, if we're playing, and Anthony, I bulldoze through you, you are in a stance trying to defend, and I just knock the crap out of you, that's a foul on me. Whistle, other way.
Yep.
If I'm driving and you jump in front of me and don't make an attempt to actually defend, and you just stand there and get run over, that shouldn't be a reward for the defense. Congrats. You got to the spot first. Now play defense. If you try and you get knocked over, that's a charge. But that eliminates the, hey, I'm going to jump in front of somebody and intentionally cause a massive collision. It's not safe. It's not defense. I hate it. Please get it out of the game.
Yeah, I feel as though taking away charges in general, basketball will essentially become a different sport. Because now we're out there, playing football and treating it like it's 4th and inches. And that's not what we want. But I will have one pushback. I feel as though if you do take away the fact that, defenders can step over and, take a charge right then and there, I think it's going to limit a lot of help defense if you can't necessarily, step over and help your guy that's been beat. But at the same token, we don't want to reward that either for somebody being able to step over and slide at the last second.
Right. So what we're really talking about is secondary defenders, right?
Yeah.
So we're not really talking about primary defenders where they've already changed the rules, and kind of to what I was talking about, at least at the NBA level, where you can jump in front of a guy and try to play defense. If you get run over, it's going to be a charge. I would be willing to compromise on verticality to an extent.
Okay, that's fair.
Where it's like, okay, get over there and try to actually challenge a shot. Basically, if you assume the body posture of I'm going to get hit, the foul is automatically on you.
Yeah.
If you are not interested in playing defense, it's too dangerous. And it doesn't encourage guys actually trying to block shots. Like someone... When the game was initially played, you ever watch Vince's Places on ESPN Plus?
No, I never watched it.
Peyton's Places, it's the same concept where they took the idea of Peyton's Places where Peyton Manning went around and learned a bunch of stories about the history of the NFL, and they did it with basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Vince Carter, and it was great. But there's an episode on cagers, and basketball used to be pretty nasty. When James Naismith founded the game, it was pretty contact. Yeah. But once you get into the modern NBA or modern basketball where they're bouncing the balls and there's shot clocks and it resembles something closer to what we see now. Nobody was taking charges. Someone figured out along the way, if I'm in legal guarding position, then I can just get run over. And then Duke was we're going to make this an art form. Boom. Get run over. And you got Duke dudes forever taking charges, and they're great at it. And it's a part of the lore of that program. And, tough nose. And, like, that's the thing. It's seen as a gritty play. He really sticks his nose in there and takes the charge. No, he took out the opposing best player's knees. That's not good. That's not basketball. So I would like to see an extreme modification of the charge rule. And if that means giving defenders a little bit more leeway on verticality, where you're calling less defensive fouls, and I'm in favor of more no calls on challenges to shots that encourages them to actually try and block the shot, then that's what I want. Like, here's what I want, the shortest version possible. I want guys trying to play the game and letting the officials officiate it as opposed to drawing calls.
Yep.
That's what I want.
I like that.
Amen.
Like that. Yeah.
You commit a foul, you call it. If you don't, you don't. It's a no call. It's fine. If the offensive guy just dump trucks someone, offensive foul the other way.
They just got to have an answer for the secondary defender. You can't just simply get rid of the secondary defender because then it's not basketball, and it's too easy for the offense.
But it is. Get there earlier.
Yeah,
there earlier and actually
Craig,
make a play.
how can you get there earlier when we're in a league where you can just easily throw a lob? Like, I think it just makes defense that much tougher. It makes it so much tougher.
But we got to get away from these collisions.
Yeah, no question.
It's not
no
good.
question.
All right, so Milwaukee though comes out of this less scathed than Miami because they lose Tyler Hero late in this game.
Yep.
And that was also on a collision like that, wasn't it?
Nah, he went diving for a freaking loose ball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I obviously was not watching the end of that game.
Yeah.
But Giannis looks like he's going to be fine for game 2. I think the Hero injury is a huge deal for Miami. They do steal one. I think this ultimately becomes a 5 or 6 game series. I think Atlanta is going to be lucky to get a game on Boston. It's a terrible matchup for the Hawks, and their hearts don't seem to be in it. They were down 30 at halftime. Yikes.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the Nets-Sixers series. Anthony, I'll run this theory by you. I like this series for Philadelphia to try to get Harden going. You always have Embiid break glass in case of emergency. And the way the Nets played it in game 1, well, Embiid's going to be a lot more of a facilitator anyway. But they're going to need Embiid to beat the other two teams, like to beat a Boston, to beat a Milwaukee. I want Embiid as fresh as possible, and I also want Harden in the best rhythm possible. Not that the Nets aren't a good basketball team, but the Sixers can beat them handily, and if Embiid needs to turn it up in games 3, 4, 5 to get there, fine. I would use this series as a tune-up to get everyone else going, get Embiid enough to keep him in a rhythm, and then unleash him next series with less pounding on him. I just can't have him getting beat up against the Nets.
Yeah, I mean, I love the theory. Zaire, he's a huge 76ers fan, being from Philly. And I was telling him, if James Harden resorts back to who he was in Houston, where he was able to, put up 30 and 13 assists, the Sixers are coming out of the East. I don't know if they're going to win it all, but they're coming out of the East just because James Harden is putting that much pressure on the defense. And when you have two guys who can single-handedly take over the game, it's tough to, really stop that. So, James Harden to get going, Tobias hopefully to get going.
He was great in game 1.
Yeah, he was. So if those, secondary players can definitely get going, I love the theory, to be honest.
Yeah, and the one thing that I saw a couple astute NBA folks point out that I thought was interesting is Harden was so good from 3 in game 1, but he really struggled from 2 and doesn't seem to have the lift right now. Yeah. So he can get to the rim, but he can't finish. So that's something to watch moving forward. Nets have a couple of good shot blockers. Obviously, Claxton's fantastic, so we'll see. All right, last one. Knicks, Cavs. I don't have a lot of initial thoughts other than this is going to be a hell of a series. I would bet on this thing going 7. What a brawl this is going to be.
It is going 7, no question. That dude, Jalen Brunson, man, answers the call every single time. But I'm expecting Darius Garland definitely have a bigger game in game 2. I think he was a little inefficient
first playoff game.
Yeah.
I would say this about Brunson. He's the perfect playoffs player. He just knows how to get his shot in the half court with regularity. He can seemingly get it whenever he wants. That is an ideal guy to have in the playoffs. All right, Western Conference, like 1 minute or less on each series. Denver's going to destroy Minnesota. This is not going to be close.
We ain't got to talk about that.
Yeah, okay, good, we're done. I think the Grizzlies are in a ton of trouble. Ja Morant hurt. He is likely going to miss a couple of games, at least one game. LeBron wasn't even effective scoring the ball in the fourth quarter, and the Lakers still won. I think the Lakers are actually a very well-built team. They complement LeBron and AD well, and if they can get by, if there's no Ja, I think the Grizz are in real trouble, already having lost a game at home.
Yeah, and Dylan Brooks, calling out the King, calling out LeBron. Calling out the Lakers. Hey, this is what you asked for, man. So he has to play better if the Grizzlies want to have any shot at beating the Lakers. But I will say, Jaren Jackson, you keep doing what you're doing, dog, and you're going to make this series very, very interesting.
He is so good. He's evolved a lot on offense. And then, obviously, defensively, he's as good as there is in the entire league. What'd you make of game one? I kind of interspersed some of my thoughts when we had Ian on Sacramento and Golden State. If I'm Golden State, I'm just fine. I'm trying to get one of these two in Sacramento. I feel good about winning my two at home. You drop game 5, win it in 6. Not that you're like, hey, we're going to win this in 6. It's going to be fine. You're trying to win every night. But I don't think Malik Monk is going to drop 30. I think he probably drops back down. Domantas Sabonis probably shoots a little better. And I feel like my guys are going to play a little bit better. Wiggins' first game back, he looked great, but he didn't shoot it well. What happens when he doesn't go 1 from 8 from 3? If I'm the Warriors, I feel good. But if I'm the Kings, I feel pretty good too, because I'm like, I went toe for toe with the champs. We're not scared. We understand what it takes. Let's go.
A lot of offense in
Yeah.
this series. Too much. I think it's going to boil down to who can get stops. I think the Warriors, they're savvy veterans, and they've been here before. So I think they'll be able to buckle down. Again, Andrew Wiggins, that was his first game back. He looked pretty good to me, so I think they'll probably try to rev up his minutes. And ultimately, play him, play Gary Payton II. They got to be able to get stops, and that's what they were not able to do in that first game. So I think it's going to boil down to defense, and I think the Warriors will be able to pull it out.
All right, and that leaves Kawhi stealing game 1 along with some help from Russell Westbrook in Phoenix. What? I mean, Westbrook goes 3 of 19, and just here's the thing I'll say about Russ. Is Russ as good as Russ thinks he is in any given moment? No. But damn if he can't be in any given moment. His competitive character is arguably the best of any athlete I have ever seen. There is not a second that dude is not in full drive, hyper-competitive mode. And the ability to keep that, even if he is having a 3 for 19 shooting night, so he, who is not a very good defender, can make one of the best defensive plays you'll ever see in the waning moments against a all-world offensive player in Devin Booker, is the epitome of the Russell Westbrook experience. And without Paul George, they need some of that. Obviously, they could use him shooting better too, especially if he's going to take 19 shots. But Kawhi reminded everybody just how damn good he is. Russ was so perfectly Russ in all of the best and a few of the worst ways. And I still think Phoenix is going to win the series. I still think their talent is too much. But talk about, again, competitive character of that Clippers team, it's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, you got to take the good with the good. You got to take the bad with the bad when it comes to Russ. And, he didn't shoot all that good, but guess what? He was out there getting the extra rebound, finding his guys. It's just he does whatever it takes to get the W for the team. And, again, he willed his team to so many victories when he was alone and with OKC, and I think that's what he had to do. He's going to have to do throughout this series. He's going to have to will his team no matter what. Take a charge,
Oh, now we're back on charges?
Yeah. Take a charge, do anything, just to get his team the dub.
No doubt. All right, game 2's tonight. Again, Philly and Brooklyn gets it started. It's a TNT night. You got some ESPN games later this week, but TNT tonight. And then you got Sacramento and Golden State at 10. Quick look at what's trending, and then real things, real people said in real microphones to wrap up the show here on the Team 980.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
Marathon Day, Boston Marathon. This morning, Evans Chibet wins his second straight Boston Marathon, and Helen Obiri who was in her second ever marathon, elite runner at other distances, but second ever marathon, wins at Boston. On the men's side, back to that real quick, Eliud Kipchoge finished 6th. That was his Boston Marathon debut, only the third ever loss in 18 career marathons. That's what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980.
You can listen to the Team 980 on your smart speaker. Just say play the Team 980.
Hi guys, it's Mark. Are you struggling with erectile dysfunction? Did you know that a major medical breakthrough is available and it isn't a pill? Today, Monday, we're running a one-day special you won't want to miss out on. Monument Medical Clinic uses the most powerful form of wave therapy. This is a technology clinically shown to repair blood vessels and improve blood flow. It's backed by 60 clinical studies, including from Cambridge. If you're ready to regain that spark in the bedroom, today is your day. Call us now and you'll qualify for the assessment and ultrasound totally free. You'll also get a gift that can produce rapid and powerful results in the bedroom in minutes. You're going to love that one, guys. Trust me. And today only, we're offering 5 tune-up treatments to our patients free. This is an unprecedented offer worth hundreds of dollars, but call today and qualify totally free. Call 202-908-5555. That's 202-908-5555. Guys, put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and get your life back. Call Monument Medical Clinic now to qualify. This offer ends today. 202-908-5555.
If you own a small business, you've probably been hearing a lot about the ERC, how it's worth up to $26,000 per employee, how easy it is. You know the spiel. So why am I still talking to you about it now? Because many of you still haven't filed a claim. But Innovation Refunds can help you close the book on this thing. They're backed by one of those big CPA firms the corporations use, so they can determine once and for all if your business qualifies. And it's free to find out. Go to innovationrefunds.com. That's innovationrefunds.com.
From town councils to Capitol Hill, agents who are realtors are advocating for what's right. We're working to increase affordable housing supply and ensure fair housing for all. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. That's who we are.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go: shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms: irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
It's Spring Black Friday at the Home Depot, which means it's time to get your outdoor spaces ready so you can enjoy more this season. Right now, you can get the Stylewell Park Point 4-piece patio set at a new lower price of $3.99. With its stain-resistant cushions and modern relaxed styling, it's the perfect centerpiece for your porch, deck, or patio, whether you're looking for sunny lounging or evening gathering. Hurry into the Home Depot to get the Stylewell Park Point patio set at a new lower price, just $3.99. Shop Spring Black Friday savings at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Mostly cloudy, temperature in the mid-80s.
Weather brought to you by Staples. Staples stores are a new world of possible with innovative tools for small business and remote workers and learners. Explore more at your local Staples store or staplesconnect.com.
The YMCA is just a starting line. For the true self blooms only when we find our purpose, what makes us tick below the surface. My why is diversity in unity, a safe space in my community, living with sincerity, giving every day my everything. With my why, I stand strong, seen and supported all along. It's a million faces in a mirror and everyone belongs. Find your why. Learn more at ymca.org for a better us.
At the V Foundation, V is for victory over cancer. V is for victory over giving up.
Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
Join our team in the fight against cancer at V.org.
The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. If you missed the breaking news earlier in the show, the Commanders' sale is one step closer to being completed. Dan Snyder and Josh Harris have submitted their agreement to the NFL for approval. If there's any adjustments to be made, they'll send it back and they'll make those adjustments. And then eventually they will get sent back for signatures. And then is the big finance committee vetting of Harris and all the limited partners, and ultimately the final approval by owners. But one step closer. That news earlier today, broken by Sportico. Eben Novy-Williams of Sportico joined us immediately after. If you want to rewind, catch that interview, you can on the Odyssey app. It's now also up on my YouTube page and the Team 980's YouTube page, as well as in the Hoffman Show podcast feed. Not speaking out of turn, Anthony, yes? Excellent.
Yes, sir.
All right, so it's in all the places you can get it, so go check that out if you so desire. And in the meantime, we, live here on the radio, will give you real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Working on it, Bruce. Working on it. All right, we got a lot of stuff today to get to. Let's see what we got. Anthony, you're gonna have to help me with the context of this first bite. It's just titled "Commanders Are Back in the System."
Yes. Basically, the Commanders.
They're back at OTAs.
Media team. Yep.
Okay, so the media team put together a little something to welcome the boys back.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Let's see what it sounded like.
Good morning. We are back, baby. It's been a minute, man. You got it, Missy. How y'all doing?
Get started again. Let's go. Let's freaking go.
Let's do it. Man, we back at it.
Right back, no cheat.
How y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you guys.
We got just a lot of hellos so far. Does it get better, Anthony?
That's the extent of it.
Okay. All right. I think we wore that one. That seems to be better. A better
I
video.
really
prop.
wanted to ask you if you could guess or like name who's saying what. Well, we know Ron was second.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. No, that would have been a good thing to mention before I hit play.
You're right. My bad.
Yeah, that's typically
Next time.
How that goes. All right, maybe we'll play that game tomorrow. Also, we never did. I'm sad about this. It's probably too late now. We never did the NFC coaches guessing like Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce did. We never did that ourselves. Maybe we'll do that at some point.
In due time.
In due time. All right. This was hilarious. So J.R. Smith was on J.J. Redick's podcast and talked about how Matthew Dellavedova almost died covering Stephen Curry in the NBA Finals because it is that exhaustive of a task. Well, De'Aaron Fox was at the podium after Game 1 of the Warriors-Kings series, and he felt like death.
Did y'all see that clip of J.R. Smith? You know, talking about Delly?
Delly almost died guarding Steph Curry.
Did y'all see that clip? That's real. it's real. I mean, obviously, you know, I didn't guard Steph the entire game, but like most of the first quarter, most of the fourth quarter, I guarded him. Yeah, that clip is real.
I think it's important when you break down NBA playoff series to remember that matters. Stephen Curry is used to running around like Stephen Curry every single night. De'Aaron Fox, who had 38 points and was awesome in Game 1, has to chase around Stephen Curry for at least 3 more games, and that's if the Kings win them all. That tends to wear down. In the same way that, like, when Shaq was at his peak, he just wore you down over a series because he just beat on you. Steph, like, in a weird way, one of the best comparisons of impact that Stephen Curry has is Shaq. I know that sounds bizarre because they could not be more different as players. But the gravity they have, the way they affect all 9 other dudes on the court, the dominance they have, like, that's not an original comparison. That is something that certainly has come up before. I don't think we have time for this right now. No. Let's save it for tomorrow so we can give it its full breath.
Okay, cool.
Incredible story out of the NHL this weekend. Anthony, 100%. Don't let me forget tomorrow. We will go ahead and create the folder for tomorrow and put it in there, and I'll do this first tomorrow. awesome story out of the NHL that we wanted to play for you in Real Things. We'll get to that tomorrow. That's it for today. Eben Novy-Williams was fantastic. Thanks to him. Ian Eagle, Sam Fortier, all great. Make sure you rewind, check those out. At BetMGM tonight, Nick Ashew and company are next, and we'll see you tomorrow on The Hoffman Show.
Hey, I'm Craig Hoffman.
And I'm Logan Paulson.
And together, we host the Take Command podcast.
Twice a week, we give you the latest insights and analysis on the Commanders from our insider perspective.
Plus, we welcome in some of the biggest and smartest names in the league to get their perspective on where the Commanders are and where they're going on and on.